The Shan State of Burma, a land of misty mountains and fertile valleys, holds a history as rich and diverse as its landscape. Home to the Shan people, the largest ethnic minority in Burma, it also encompasses a tapestry of other groups like the Wa, Kachin and Ta'ang. For centuries, the Shan enjoyed relative autonomy, their rulers paying tribute to Burmese kings while maintaining their own systems of governance. This delicate balance was shattered in the 20th century. The fall of the Burmese monarchy and the subsequent rise of a centralized Burmese state saw the Shan incorporated into the Union of Burma. The promise of federalism enshrined in the 1947 constitution proved hollow. The Shan saw their autonomy eroded, their culture marginalized. This fueled resentment, and by the 1960s, armed resistance movements emerged, demanding greater autonomy and self-determination. The Shan State Army, formed in 1964, became a key player in the fight for Shan rights, engaging in protracted armed struggle against the Burmese military, known as the Tatmadaw. The conflict, spanning decades, brought immense suffering to the Shan people. Villages were razed, civilians displaced, and human rights abuses became commonplace. The Shan found themselves caught between the hammer of the Tatmadaw and the anvil of various ethnic armed groups vying for control. Despite the hardships, the Shan spirit remained unbroken. They clung to their traditions, their language, and their dreams of a future where their voices would be heard. The signing of ceasefire agreements in the 1990s offered a glimmer of hope, a chance for peace and a return to normalcy. However, the underlying issues remained unresolved, the dream of genuine autonomy still out of reach. The Tatmadaw, despite the ceasefires, continued to maintain a heavy presence in Shan State, exploiting its resources and suppressing dissent. The fragile peace was always under threat, a tinderbox waiting for a spark. The military coup of February 2021, which ousted Aung San Suu Kyi's democratically elected government, sent shockwaves across Burma. For the Shan, it was a cruel reminder of the Tatmadaw's enduring grip on power. The coup shattered the fragile peace that had held for years, plunging the country into chaos. In Shan State, the impact was immediate and devastating. The Tatmadaw, facing nationwide resistance, turned its attention to crushing dissent in the ethnic states, including Shan State. Ceasefires were disregarded, and the Tatmadaw launched brutal offensives against ethnic armed groups, including the Shan State Army. The coup had a profound impact on the dynamics of power within Shan State. The legitimacy of the Tatmadaw, already tenuous, evaporated completely. Ethnic armed groups, sensing an opportunity, stepped up their activities. The Shan State Army, along with other groups like the Ta'ang National Liberation Army and the Arakan Army, formed alliances, pooling resources and coordinating their efforts against the Tatmadaw. The conflict took on a new dimension, with clashes becoming more frequent and intense. The Tatmadaw, resorting to its traditional tactics of brute force, unleashed a reign of terror on civilian populations. The coup also saw a surge in the recruitment of young Shan men and women into the ranks of the Shan State Army and other armed groups. Fueled by anger at the Tatmadaw's brutality and a desire to protect their communities, they took up arms, adding to the ranks of the resistance. The conflict in Shan State became a microcosm of the wider struggle in Burma, a battleground where the aspirations of a people for freedom and self-determination clashed with the ruthlessness of a military junta, determined to cling to power at any cost. The post-coup landscape in Shan State has witnessed a dramatic shift in warfare tactics. Gone are the days of hit-and-run guerrilla warfare fought in the dense jungles. The conflict has spilled into urban centers, transforming bustling towns like Lashio and Mogok into battlegrounds. This shift is partly driven by the evolving strategies of ethnic armed groups, particularly the Brotherhood Alliance, a coalition that includes the Arakan Army, the Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Army, and the Ta'ang National Liberation Army. Emboldened by their successes against the Tatmadaw in Rakhine and Kachin states, these groups have adopted more conventional warfare tactics, aiming to seize and hold territory. This shift is also a response to the Tatmadaw's own brutal tactics. Facing stiff resistance on the ground, the Tatmadaw has resorted to indiscriminate airstrikes, artillery bombardments, and the use of heavy weaponry in civilian areas. This has forced ethnic armed groups to adapt, moving their operations to urban areas where the Tatmadaw's air superiority is less effective. The urban battlefield presents new challenges for both sides. For the ethnic armed groups, it requires a different set of skills and tactics. They need to be adept at urban warfare, capable of conducting house-to-house fighting and managing complex urban environments. They also need to be mindful of the impact of their actions on civilian populations who are often caught in the crossfire. For the Tatmadaw, fighting in urban areas limits their ability to utilize their full arsenal, particularly airstrikes, without causing significant civilian casualties and drawing international condemnation. The urban battlefield also exposes their weaknesses, particularly their lack of training and discipline in urban warfare. The changing nature of warfare in Shan State is a worrying trend. It increases the risk to civilians who are often used as human shields or become victims of indiscriminate attacks. The destruction of infrastructure and displacement of populations further exacerbate the humanitarian crisis in the region. The escalating conflict in Shan State has triggered a dire humanitarian crisis. Civilians are bearing the brunt of the violence, trapped between the warring parties and facing unimaginable hardships. The Tatmadaw's indiscriminate attacks on villages, often conducted under the pretext of targeting ethnic armed groups, have forced hundreds of thousands to flee their homes. Displacement camps, already overflowing with those displaced by previous conflicts, are struggling to cope with the influx of new arrivals. The situation is further compounded by the Tatmadaw's deliberate obstruction of humanitarian aid. Aid agencies face immense challenges in accessing conflict zones, with the Tatmadaw often denying them permission or imposing bureaucratic hurdles. This denial of essential aid has had a devastating impact on the lives of ordinary people. Food, clean water, and medical supplies are in short supply, leading to malnutrition, disease outbreaks, and preventable deaths. The education of children has been severely disrupted, with schools closed or destroyed in the fighting. The psychological toll of the conflict is immeasurable. Years of violence, displacement, and loss have left deep scars on the collective psyche of the Shan people. The constant fear of airstrikes, arbitrary arrests, and extortion by both sides has created a climate of fear and uncertainty. The international community has been largely silent in the face of this unfolding tragedy. While there have been condemnations of the coup and calls for a ceasefire, concrete actions to address the humanitarian crisis have been lacking. The people of Shan State, caught in the crossfire of a conflict not of their making, deserve better. They deserve peace, justice, and a future free from fear and want.